You're listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more.
Wepa familia! Buckle up and vibe. It's your boy Al Mega, because today we have a legend in the building, baby. I'm talking about a man who literally rewrote the rules of the comic book game. I mean, he was the first African-American writer and editor in the industry, you know, for one of the big two. He's also the maestro behind classics that made your pull list very sacred. I mean, my man has worked on Black Panther, to Quantum and Woody, and now he's bringing that comic book storytelling, that iconicism that he's known for, to the she-devil with a sword, baby. That's right. For his first time ever, my man here is going to be writing Red Sonja in Dynamite Comics, Sonja Reborn. I mean, well, on her own title. We're going to get into that. Yes. I'm not misspeaking here, all right? So grab your sword, sharpen your mind, and get ready, baby, for a journey through history, creativity, and straight up excellence. Let's get it popping with the one and only, the legend himself, the big boss, Priest. How you doing, kiddo?
I'm good, Al. I can't live up to that intro, but thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Hey, let me tell you a quick story. You said get your sword ready. You know, I had an assistant editor at Marvel back when I used to work there, and he bought a sword. I want to say at a flea market or something, and he was bringing it to the office because he wanted to like mount it on the wall or keep it in the office, whatever like that. And the cops arrested him. You know, it's a rusty old sword. You know, and he brought it to the subway, and these cops.
Wait.
Don't grab your sword, you know.
Don't tell me he did not have it wrapped up. He thought it was a good idea to. Please tell me he didn't have it wrapped up.
Were you supposed to wrap? See, now you're schooling me.
Because I mean, at least have it wrapped up. I mean, if this guy probably had it fully exposed in the New York City train, that's the last thing you want to do.
It was an old, rusty, you know, antique, you know, and the guy ends up in handcuffs. I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny. I guess it wasn't funny to him at the time, but it's funny now.
Not.
You know?
Of course it is. I mean, you think about it. It's like, yo.
So I guess you know what? You're probably right. He probably should have just took a hefty bag or something and wrapped it around it, and we don't know what it is, right?
Yeah, you don't know. It's just a bag. But my man's walking out with a rusty ass sword in the train. Come on, man. I love it. I love stories like that. So, Sir Priest, baby, you gotta talk to me. You kicked in the doors of the comic book industry when you came on, for real. And what surprised me is when I looked into it, like, damn, that was kind of late in the game too, you know, relative to the journey of comics. Like, what the hell, bro? Really this long of a journey? So when you look back now, do you see yourself as more of a trailblazer, or do you see yourself as a bulldozer?
No, I see myself as just someone lucky to be, you know, sort of flying under the radar for all these years. And Al, I got to tell you, when I started, I was 17 years old, and I had no sense of being the first at anything. I was just really happy to land a gig at Marvel and to kind of grow up there with all these people who were my aunts and uncles, and you know, some of us got along and some of us didn't. But you know, back in those days, you had all these artisans that were working in the office. You know, what I mean is, you know, the office to my left had Al Milgram, who was an inker. He was an editor there. And Mary Jo Duffy was his assistant, and Mary Jo Duffy was the writer on Power Man Iron Fist. And then, of course, I shared an office with Larry Hama, the luminary Larry Hama. Across the hall was Denny O'Neil. Next door was Michael Golden, Carl Potts.
Nice. Yeah, I need a broom for all these names you dropped.
You understand? Right, that's what I'm trying to say. You know, Marie Severin was the art director. John Romita Sr. took over from Marie Severin, and he became the art director. Len Wein shared an office with Marv Wolfman way in the back there. They both worked at home, but when they came into the office, they shared that office there. And next door to them, Dave Cockrum, you know, the famous X-Men artist, you know. This is what I'm trying to say. These were all my aunts and uncles and this lunatic place that I was growing up in. And I just felt happy to be there. And I really had no sense about the whole first black anything until much later.
Oh, but I mean, it's crazy again because of the time that you got in. That was what, early 80s, correct?
Yeah.
No,
78.
78.
Yep.
And then comics has been around since what, the 30s? It took that long. What you achieved, and that shit blew my mind, to be honest. It blew my mind because I'm like, wait a minute, are you serious? And I said, holy shit.
There you go. Well, I had no idea, and thanks to Jim Shooter, who picked me out of a group of high school kids all trying to get the same.
How'd you do this, man? I want to know that story. Because this is pre-internet days, okay, folks? My man, this is when the grind was not what it is today. That's when the grind was really a grind.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why there was so many artisans, so many people, writers, artists, inkers, colorists, letterers, while there were so many people who were working in the office because the rates were so low that you had to have the office gig just to make ends meet. So like, Gene Colan was drawing Tomb of Dracula and he was getting paid like $35 a page. That's what I'm talking about. You understand? Back in those days. So it was just a whole different atmosphere. And I came to the plate with it was an internship program run by the New York City school system. And I came in with a comic book that I wrote and drew called The Stingray. I have no idea what happened to that comic book. I think eventually I threw it out. But I had written and drawn this thing, and I had brought in a blue line print. A blue line is it's a proof that you make off of the plates before you actually run the comic through a printing press. I went to a school that taught you printing, so we had printing presses and all kinds of stuff to make film and make plates. I knew how to make plates. I knew how to set type. I knew how to do all that stuff. So I wrote and drew my own comic book, and then I was ready to print it. So we had this pre-press thing called a blue line, and I came in with the blue line. And I gave it to Shooter, and he read the blue line and so forth. And and then I think it was a week or less later that I got a call from the school saying that I had been chosen, and that's how I got my.
That is so cool. I mean, were you a fan of Marvel Comics prior to that opportunity?
Oh, yeah. I mean, who wasn't,
in that era?
I mean, I started out as mainly a DC fan, but it's kind of like, you don't want to get the gremlin wet, It's like once I got my first little taste of Marvel, like that Spider-Man story where Harry was on drugs and the Comics Code refused to put the stamp on it, and Stan ran with it anyway. Stan said, "Screw it, let's go." And that got into the headlines. And my mom read about it in the paper, this anti-drug story, and she said, she thought that would be. Let me give this to Chris, because Chris reads all this stuff, and she gave it to me, and that was my first. Up until then, I'd only exclusively read DC Comics, and that was the first, And Marvel is such a revelation because Marvel is set in the real world. Like Spider-Man was hanging out on the Empire State Building. It was a real place, and he was talking about, people with the Spiro Agnew wristwatch, and cracking jokes about whatever
was ill at the time. Yeah,
exactly. So it just was like, wow, this is a whole different thing. And I just became, probably I want to say I must have been about 9 or 10. I think I became like a real hardcore Marvel fan.
Oh, awesome. I did that. Okay. So what's one wild editorial meeting from the early days that makes you either laugh, cringe, or go, what the hell happened there?
Oh man, I'd have to narrow it down.
There's too many.
Editorial meetings. Well, back in those days at Marvel, see, DC was a different experience. I started editing at DC in 1990, and DC was a very different place. It was just there was a lot of tension, a lot of uptight stuff going on. Marvel back in the 80s.
Bougie.
What's that?
It was like a bougie little type of thing compared to Marvel.
No, it's just that Paul Levitz had a much different management style in terms of how he ran the office. you know, and he would kind of set up. He liked to have these disparate personalities and just put us in a room and let us fight it out, you know. And there are lots of times when I went to Paul and like all but begged Paul to step into whatever the disagreement was, to come and weigh in, and he wouldn't do it. He was like, you know, you guys are the creative people. I'm, you know, the, you know, administrative side. And he was really disciplined about not coming in. He let Dick Giordano, who was the editor in chief, he let Dick Giordano handle the creative side. He was handling the publishing side with Jeanette Kahn, you know. But there were times when I would just all but beg him, Paul, you got to come downstairs,
like,
come down the
please,
hall,
for the love of God, bro,
smack these guys around for me. And no, he was very disciplined about it. Now at Marvel, completely different story. Marvel was just kind of an insane place where it was just, you know, a bunch of big kids who never grew up, and it was completely undisciplined. And so, you know, Stan is going to move to California and turn over the reins to, I think Len Wein was in there for a minute. Marv Wolfman was in it for like a half a day or so. Archie Goodwin had it for a while, and Archie didn't want it. He was miserable at it, you know. And so they gave it to this assistant editor. He went from assistant editor to editor in chief. They gave it to Jim Shooter, and Jim had a real vision for the place. But Al, you know, when you're like a 12-year-old who's just used to just staying up all night and eating ice cream for breakfast, and now you have this, you know, authority figure who steps in and says, okay, we need to get our house in order. You tend to resent them. And everybody in authority, everybody who's ever had that job, you know, from way back in the day, from Len Wein all the way up to Joe Quesada and, you know, C.B. Cebulski, you know, everyone who's ever had that job. Well, actually, you know, people like CB. I think CB is kind of the exception.
Yeah, I met CB last year at a Coke soda event in New York, and that he was so cool. What a great energy that man had.
And he hasn't burned out yet. I would just like when he first took the job, I bumped into him at a convention somewhere, and I was like, "Are you okay? Are you need to, you know, do we need to call somebody? Why would you take?" Because he came back from China to get this job. You know,
what?
I'm going.
He said, "Yeah, what are they putting in that Red Bull over there?"
But he seems to be having a good time, and well, God bless him. You know, but yeah, it's a high pressure situation, and you end up being like you're painting a target on your back, and everybody from back in the day all the way up to before CB, they just had this big target on their back, and Shooter had the biggest target of all because Jim wanted to make the comic books better and have them come out on time. And those are two diametrically opposed goals.
In comics, yes.
Yeah, in comic. Well, actually, in comics, you know, so trying to improve the product meant that he would send a lot of stuff back. He was like this guy who would keep, like you're running a restaurant, Al, and he keeps sending the stuff back to the kitchen.
I cannot imagine. Yeah, the cooks are getting tired.
while demanding that we ship on time, that we don't miss shipping. So it was like having your head in a vice all the time. And then, you know, stuck in the middle were the Ramitas, because John Ramita was the art director and he had to handle all these last minute changes and corrections. And his wife was the scheduling person. So she was always, you know, she had to come down the hall and talk to us, and we would just flip out because here's Virginia standing in my door. And I'm like,
oh God, no.
And it wasn't fair. And it wasn't fair to her. And I really regret a lot of that, the grief that we gave that woman, because she's like really just one of the kindest, nicest, sweetest human beings ever, you know. And we you know, it's just she had the most thankless job in the world, where she had to come down the hall and be a mom. And actually she was the perfect person to do it. Shooter was right to pick her because she was mom. And not only that, not only did we adore her, but we seriously respected her husband, and we would not disrespect her because of Johnny, because John was just freaking amazing. He was, you know, the uncle we all wish we had. And I loved him. Man. I loved him dearly, Al.
I love to hear that. That's great. Now let's get into this, because, you know, you've touched on this iconic character, one of my favorite series ever, Conan. You know, because again, you work with those legendary characters, Conan, Black Panther, Deathstroke, you know, even some of Valiant's finest, if you will, you know, in Quantum and Woody, amazing. But what was it about Sonja that made you say that now was the time? Like, okay, it's my time now. Let me get my story on Sonja Dolo out there.
That's really not how it happened. I think that it was
No?
more of
Okay.
Dynamite approaching me and me going, "Yeah, we don't have time for this. I'm
Oh
really,
man, okay. Oh,
I'm,
they
re-
pulled you into this.
I'm
Okay,
really
okay.
busy, And then I think I pitched them a completely preposterous idea, uh, assuming that they'd go away. That this would be like so
Jeez.
preposterous that they'd never say yes to this idea and they'd leave me
Love it.
alone. And then next thing I know, we're on a schedule.
I love it, Chris. Let's do it. Oh man, no
So
way.
I'm like, oh, okay,
Okay.
but you know, uh, uh, anytime you talk to me about a character, my first question that I ask myself is, what can I bring to the table? What would I have to say about Deathstroke that hasn't been said before? How do I see him? And so I do a bunch of research and I kind of get into the character's head and I blah blah blah. I go through my process, to kind of find my voice for whatever the character is. And I wrote Sonia quite a few times back in the '80s, but I wrote her really poorly. And back in the '80s, we didn't know any better, so we treated women very badly. We had, the trope of a strong female character, or we'd have all this violence against women, or we'd have these other things going on because
The
we're
over
men and we're
sexualization, whatever. Yeah.
right because we're men and we're idiots, and so
Sometimes we
I
think
had
with the wrong head.
I had her show up in a few issues of Conan, but I'm embarrassed by those stories because it's just I let her get hurt, and Conan had to rescue her, and it's like, oh God.
You made her the damsel in distress. Gotcha.
Yes, I made her I made Red Sonja a damsel in distress, and what the heck was I thinking? So if anything, this is kind of the priest apology tour, where I'm just kind of
The redemption arc.
but at the same time, I'm probably going to piss off a lot of Red Sonja fans. The other thing is that, I never look at sales figures, so I couldn't tell you what kind of numbers Red Sonja does. But um, uh, my other question that I would ask myself, whether it's Deathstroke or Panther or Red Sonja, is like, how do you put butts in seats? How do you
Yes.
open this world up to people who would not ordinarily read this character or would not ordinarily be drawn to this character? So with Black Panther, we transferred this character named Everett K. Ross from Kazar. I created him in Kazar, and I transferred him over to Panther so that Everett could be the voice of the average comic book reader, who might be reluctant to read about a Black character. So I had Everett Ross say all the things that an average, comics fan might say. Every excuse that a character might have for not buying this book would come out of Everett's mouth in a comical way, and in sometimes just borderline racist way, But it felt truthful because these are things that I'm sure people would think but not actually say out loud.
Yeah, doing the Chappelle kind of stick, but of course before Chappelle
Right,
did.
right, right, exactly. But what it did was it opened the door, and I think Black Panther became pretty much the first for many readers. Black Panther was the first Black superhero, if not the first Black literary work of any kind that they had ever read, and that was because we made them feel welcome, and that was the purpose there. Now for Sonia, my first question is like, how do we get more butts in seats? How do we get more people to read Red Sonja? How do we get people who are not necessarily even drawn to a sword and sorcery book to read a sword and sorcery book? And now, Al, you have to strike a balance between trying to invite new people to the party without losing the people who brought you there.
Yeah,
Because you caught a ride with these people to the party, right?
Yeah.
You want to welcome the new people, but you gotta dance with the ones who brought you here too. So
yeah, man, you gotta give them that lambada, make them feel sexy too. Come on now.
So right now, there's all this like yelling going on about our World to Come series, the new Black Panther thing over at Marvel. So there's a bunch of adjectives.
Oh my gosh, yeah, people are going. I love it though. Hey, listen, it's comics, folks. Multiverse. Be easy.
Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is there's all this yelling going on about that. Now when Sonja drops, there's going to be a lot of yelling going on about Sonja, where they're going to go, "What's he doing? He's ruining our. That's my favorite character. What's he doing
Oh
to my
God,
favorite?"
here we go.
Because I'm never out to do anything against a reader or to
Yeah.
or to offend a reader. But at the same time, I get tired of reading the same comic book over and over again. Number one.
Poppy, I get you. You want to put characters in compromising situations that may not be relative to where they normally would go to, and why not? That's
Right.
storytelling. Take a character outside of a comfort zone just as much as you need to take the reader out sometimes so they could appreciate their character.
This is what I'm talking about. But like I said, there's always a little speed bump there. And we had that speed bump with Panther, like the Marvel Knights Black Panther back in the 90s. When we launched that book, there was a lot of criticism from people who were like, "How dare you give Black Panther an iPhone?" They were just really offended by the Kimoyo card that where he talks to people on it, because there was no iPhone in those days. We got these letters like, what a preposterous thing that you could have video on something that small. Come on.
And nowadays, look at this. You know what? Fuck Steve Jobs. That was Christopher Priest right here. Priest did this. We need where's the Priest phone, bro?
The Priest phone, So, we're taking, I'm taking my swing at Sonja, in an unconventional way. Because I just think, there's no point in hiring me and not expecting me to show up. You don't hire, Garth Ennis and expect him to write like Mark Waid. Mark Waid is the best Mark Waid there ever was. And there's a lot of people trying to write like Mark Waid, and I wish they'd stop because, Mark makes it look easy. It ain't easy. He's the best at what he does. It ain't easy. Trust me.
His knowledge, his experience, all that fits into that narrative of storytelling. And when you don't have that, you could try to be someone, but when you don't have that,
right. And he's got this brilliant mind, and and this obvious love for the genre that just pours out of him on every page. So I'm like, okay, well, Priest is showing up on Red Sonja. Buckle your seatbelts because he's going to do something here that is probably unexpected or unusual. Or like, well, hey, here's a story you haven't read before. So our story, our elevator pitch, basically, is what if there was a young woman, a young British woman, who is like a low-level secretary who works for the royal family, works for the government in Britain here. She walks through a tunnel and she loses consciousness, and she wakes up to discover that she's Red Sonja, living in the Hyborian age. Okay, so what this is kind of a deconstruction, not just on Red Sonja, but on the sword and sorcery genre altogether, where we wake this person up, a modern day person, dump them into the deep end of the pool in Hyboria, and she wakes up in this world, and she's trying to figure out, like, first of all, how'd I get here, of course, but second of all, now how do I survive in this environment? She's 5'8", 5'10". I think Sonja's a fairly large woman.
Yeah, she's
but still, 5'10", maybe 120, 130 pounds, maybe,
of muscle, of lean muscle.
Yeah, but she's in this environment where she's surrounded by these muscle-bound barbarians. She's being chased by monsters and wizards, and she has to learn on her. Like the first time we see her, when she wakes up, she has to mount this horse. She doesn't know how to ride a horse. And she ends up falling off the horse.
She's a city girl, man. That shit. Yeah, listen, I'm Puerto Rican, and I don't even know how to mount the horse properly. You crazy?
Well, but see, if I threw you into the brush and you woke up and now you're Conan, okay? Now you have to ask yourself, how do I eat? Where do I sleep? How do you go to the bathroom in the house?
Did you give me a sword? Do I have the biggest sword? Do I have the sword? If I have the sword, I'm a Puerto Rican. I'm good with blades, falling to the stereotype. Now, wiping my butt, I guess, is leaves and grass. Do I want to kill anything? No. Maybe I want to go for fruits and stuff, man. I don't know how I feel about killing an animal. But if somebody's after me,
Yeah, but here's the thing, Al. In order for her to survive, she's going
I
to have
love
to
her.
kill a person, not an animal. She's going to
I
have to kill
see.
people almost every day of her life just to survive. So she
That's
has
what
to
she's.
confront
Oh,
that reality. So it's like you're taking this modern sensibility and juxtaposing it against the times and the environment. In other words, like, there's a lot that sword and sorcery takes for granted, and we just see these people and they're on horseback and they all have swords. Where do you get a sword? Where do you get a sword? This monster grabs her and drags her through the woods, and she's kicking and screaming and she's yelling. She's frightened out of her mind. And her squire, this little kid, this boy, comes chasing behind her, and he's like, "Stop that! Stop that! Stop making that noise!" It's and the monster. So she takes her sword and she throws it at the monster, and it gets stuck in the monster. The monster skitters off into the woods. Okay, and she looks at the kid and she's screaming at the top of her lungs, just paralyzed with fear. And the kid goes, "Shuddy, shuddy, shut up!" And she goes, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he goes, "Stop screaming." And she's like, "Well, it's a big scaly monster. I just scared the crap out of me." And he goes, "Yeah, but if you keep screaming, your men, her men, the barbarian horde that Sonja's riding with, they might hear her screaming. And if they hear her screaming, if they know that she's afraid, they're going to turn on her. And they're going to rape her and kill him, or worse, the other way around. But the point is, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're not even allowed to scream. And so, so then she wants to, oh, well, let's get the hell out of here. Let's get out of these woods. And the kid goes, "Okay, fine. Soon as you get your sword, you got to go get your sword." And she goes, "Screw the sword. Let's get the hell out of here." And he goes like,
"That sword."
And it's like, you can't just leave it here. And she goes, "Well, we'll just get another one." He goes, "Another what?" He goes, "Another sword." And the kid doesn't understand. And she goes, "Well, certainly you have we'll just go buy another one. You certainly have a sword store somewhere."
Oh man, the sword store. Like,
where do you get a sword, Al? And it has to be fitted for her. It's got to be the right weight, the right length for her. I mean, she had this thing custom made. She stole it from somebody, whatever she got the thing from. But she's damn sure not going to leave it in the woods, stuck in the big scaly monster. So we're confronting step by step stuff that you've always seen in a sword and sorcery comic, but you never stop to think about it. You never stop to think, where do you get a sword?
How did she get her chainmail? I mean, did she appear in her chainmail? Like, what the hell am I wearing? What the hell did I get?
Well, that's the first question too. It's like, why am I dressed like this? And we explain that. So we will take you through that. Why is she wearing the chainmail? And then we'll take her through, like, she gets she gets a minor cut. And she ends up getting, she ends up almost dying from the cut. And even when she's almost dying and she's feverish and she's practically on her deathbed, the kid is like, "You have to fake it. You got to stand up and act like you're strong, act like you're still with us, because if
your war, baby, Sun Tzu, you got to do Sun Tzu it, baby."
Because if your men see you weak like this, they're going to kill us, and so we're confronting all these different realities, and it's a lot of fun. It's hopefully there's action adventure, there's some humor, there's some poignancy, there's a lot of heartbreak going on here, and a lot of funny stuff going on here at the same time. So it's a gamble. It's a real different take on the character. I'm having a blast writing it. This guy, Alessandro Miracolo, is doing a great job drawing the thing.
It is a beautiful cover. And I have a big shout out to Lance, that says, "Eliminate convenience and you develop character."
See? That's, I think he just summed up the series. We're eliminating convenience. We're eliminating convenience, but yeah, so it's just that she's lost, frightened, alone, and everything in this world is out to kill her. Go. Welcome to Sonja Reborn.
Yeah, man, I love it. I mean, look at these covers. We got like 5 covers, coming through from Dynamite Comics. And folks, I mean, again, you hear Chris, you hear the excitement. I mean, I feel there's genuine excitement from you on this story, and I'm digging that. So, so what's your process now compared to like 1983? Is it Spotify and coffee or vinyl records and absolute silence?
I can't have any noise while I'm working. In fact, I have noise canceling headphones I put on when my neighbor's dogs are out there or somebody's mowing the lawn. I
Yeah.
can't. It shatters my concentration. Um, the difference between now and 1983 or whatever is that I've been writing for 30 years. I kind of have my act down now in terms of how to outline a story and break it down, and I kind of know how to pace things and so forth. Um, it's a lot easier for me, and yet a lot harder. It's easier in the sense that I feel like I have my craft has improved a lot, my structure has improved a lot. It's harder in that it's 30 years worth of stories, hundreds of thousands of comic book stories that have been published in the last 3 decades.
Yeah.
So Al, it's like you got to get up in the morning and go, all right, now I need to write a new Batman story that we've never seen before, and DC wants me to use the Penguin, and we want you to have the Batmobile crash or whatever. Go,
Yeah.
and it's like that's what comic book writing is like. Hold a gun to your head and come up with like an original idea that's never been seen before. Given all the comics that have been put out in the last half a century. So yeah, it's easier in the fact that the command of craft. It's harder in that ideas, Al. It's tough.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that because I was gonna ask you if you felt that was more creative freedom now, with the indie and legacy publishers like Dynamite, as opposed to your time when you were like with Big Two.
I have way more freedom with independence, with the stuff I'm doing for Dynamite and for the other independents.
Yeah.
With Marvel and DC now, DC has been corporate owned for a long time. Warner Brothers has owned them for a long time. But when Paul was in place, Paul Levitz was in place. His main job, as he saw it, actually, I don't want to speak for him, but my understanding. His main job was to be the firewall between the comic book company and the studio. So he purposely kept us in New York. And we only moved to DC only moved out west after Paul retired, and then there was nobody there to throw themselves on the track. I think Jeanette had already left, and then Paul retired or whatever, and now, not only did they move out to the West Coast, but they are in the same building with the studio people, and there's a lot of meddling. So if I want to write a Batman story or over at DC, because now it's Disney at Marvel. Now there's Disney at Marvel. Everything at Marvel goes through standards and practices. So it's going to go through some people in suits who know nothing about comics, and some lawyers who know even less about comics. And then the script comes back and it's got all these notes on it, like my U.S. Agent series. We had the first issue locked. It was approved by Marvel. It went through editorial. Everything's thumbs up, and then it comes back from the lawyers, and it looks like it has the measles. He can't say this. He can't do that.
Jesus,
you're making him look like a jerk. And I go, well, he's U.S.
He is.
He's John Walker. He
is.
They don't know that. No, Al, they don't. The people who are reading this stuff are people who are trying to make their way through whatever the organization is.
Yeah,
so
smooth
usually the readers,
usually the readers.
Yeah, usually the readers are people who have, their entry-level jobs, they're passing through whatever the story is, but they're not creative people. They're not writers and editors. They don't know, they have like a guideline, a book of guidelines, and I had John behaving the way I remembered Mark Gruenwald writing him. Back in the day. So I wrote him as kind of a jerk,
Yeah.
He can't say that. He can't do that. So they really, what you saw in print on U.S. Agent was the watered down version of what we had in mind, what we had planned, which would have been a lot closer to Deadpool. You know what I mean? It would have been a lot edgier, a lot more, of those rebald kind of jokes that skirt the edge, of being possibly racist or sexist or whatever the story was. But they rounded the edges off of my U.S. Agent series, and that's kind of their job, I guess.
Well, that's their loss. And again, that's all these covers. And I also have a teaser for cover issue 2. Look at this! Holy shit! Wow! I mean, is this what she's gonna become? Like, don't not give a F no more. Wepa, I cannot wait. You got me excited. Like, how
Well, you
many
know,
issues we
see,
going for here?
well, you know, it's tough for me to answer that question. We're looking for an audience. If we find an audience, well, I would think it would go at least a year or two. If they ain't buying what we're selling, who knows? I don't know. So we have to see. But basically, you have to think of the series as, becoming Red Sonja. As like you take the average comic book reader, the average female comic book reader, and dump her into Hyboria in that chainmail bikini, put the sword in her hand, and go, "Good luck to you."
It's like Quantum Leap, but with Red Sonja.
This is what I'm saying to you.
I love
So
that.
it's
I love this.
it should be cathartic. It should be something that the reader can really identify with and go, "What if this happened? What if this happened to me? How would I react? How would I respond? What would I do?" So usually, Al, in movies or TV shows, you have the sidecar character, who is kind of educating the audience on, so the sidecar character's there, and like the hero is teaching little buddy, the ropes. Well, this is what this does, and this is how this functions. In Sonja Reborn, it is the main character who has to learn. And the squire, the kid, he's the guy that's teaching her, reminding her,
the student is the teacher in this case.
Yeah, I mean, issue 1, they get, there's this fort up the hill that's on fire, and he goes, "We got to get up. We have to get up that hill." So she gets on the horse, and she can't ride a horse. She falls off the horse, But she finally gets on the horse, Al, and she goes, "All right, very well. Let's get on up there and save those people." And the squire is like, "Save those people?" She goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "We're the ones who are attacking the fort." And Sonja's like, and she looks around at all these dead, she looks around at all these dead people, all these dead soldiers. And she's like, "You mean we did this?" And he goes, "Yes, we did this. That's what barbarian means." So she's learning the hard way. It's a lot. It's a fun series. I hope it does find an audience. I hope we have a good long run with it. But fingers crossed.
I'm not hoping. I know it will, in fact, find an audience, because this sounds fun. I'm an old school Red Sonja fan, because again, I am a fan of Conan, and I do dig Red Sonja. I got her comics all over the place too, first apps. So I love this character too. So I'm really excited with what you're going to do with this. Now, let me ask you here on this. Have you ever had a Red Sonja moment in real life? You know what I mean? Like, where you metamorphically pick up a sword and said, "I'm handling this my way."
It all depends on what you mean by Red Sonja moment.
I'm asking you if you cut somebody's head off. You know what I mean? No, well, you stood up and you stood your ground.
Well, I can be obnoxious. I never think of myself as a tough guy. But I have a bad temper, and
you're from Queens, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. We New Yorkers, we flow a type of way, something.
Yeah. So I had to kind of learn some. Actually, when I was a kid in school, they were going to kick me out of school, so mom had to take me to a shrink and teach me some anger management.
Oh wow.
So even now, I'm kind of. It takes a lot to get me there. Yes. I'm a pretty patient guy, and I kind of go, being a writer, I kind of analyze people. I go, well, this person is very upset. Like some guy cut me off in traffic yesterday, and I'm going, you cut me off in traffic just so you could get to the traffic light that's right in front of us, in front of me. And I'm going, was that even necessary? And you see a lot of that on the road, where you see like people who have never quite grown up, and their juvenile side is coming out. So I can be kind of analytical, like Mr. Spock, where I could just kind of go, well, the reason he's doing that is so forth, blah, blah, blah. So it takes a lot to get me to the point where, I might have a Red Sonja moment. And it's scary when I get there, when I get to the, I don't give an F, point where, the let's go point, but yeah, I'm not really that guy. I write comic books. I'm not a tough guy, but just keep your hands off me.
Hey, there we go.
Don't put your hands on me. That's all.
Yeah, the only time the hands should be anywhere near them is when you're extending them in friendship to shake and show that love. You know what I'm saying? That's what we gotta do here. Now, if young Christopher Priest met current Priest, what's the one piece of advice that either blow his mind or make him go, nah, you crazy?
Wow, that's a good question. I think, if I went back, to the teenage guy, to Jim Owsley that started working at Marvel, I would probably tell him to slow down, relax, don't be so hyper. I think I came in a little too strong. And I think that there was a lot of hostility toward Jim Shooter because Jim was the boss, and everybody was just a company full of kids, and nobody wants, everybody has hostility toward the boss. And I was the boss's protege. He picked me out. He hired me. He brought me in there. He was the one teaching me the ropes, and some people sort of saw me as Shooter Jr., and a lot of times when I was, as an editor, I would echo a lot of, of Jim's teaching, which kind of also, rubbed some people the wrong way. But you have to understand, Al, Jim was my teacher. He was my point of reference. I mean, these other people, they worked for Archie, they worked for Len, they worked for whoever else had been an editor in chief. And so they had a different point of reference, and they were butting up against, the new way with Jim. I didn't know the old way. I just got here, so Jim is my first, like, okay, he says, do it this way. Let's, yes, sir. So probably I would have, I'd probably, there are things that I would probably do better now in terms of people management than I handled before, because I was young. I didn't know any better. In some cases, I was scared. There is life outside of comics. Like back then, I thought like getting fired would be like the end of the world, and turned out it wasn't. And now I can tell you there is unemployment and there's overcommitment. And as a creative person, as a writer, an artist, as an actor, as a musician, you live somewhere between unemployment and overcommitment. You live somewhere in the balance there, and it's terrifying. But there's times when you have to put your foot down and go, well, this isn't working for me, and thank you very much, but I need to head to the unemployment line. So it happens.
There we go. All right, so this is what I need you to do right now, brother. Por favor, because again, this is it. This is the final pitch, baby. Like I like to call it. So, reborn to the world, like you're trying to convince your toughest critic at a comic shop with 30 seconds on the clock. Go of why people need to buy this comic.
Oh man. Well, you need to buy this comic. You need to buy this comic and kind of forget about who's writing it. I mean, you should buy the comic for the character. You should buy the comic book for the content. You should buy the character for the just for the ride, for the journey. We're taking a journey with this character and taking her from 0 to 60. And we're getting to see all the stops along the way. Forget about me. It should never be about me. It should be about the character and about the product that we're putting out. And it's a lot of fun. And I think if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I would hope that Dynamite would find somebody who's way more talented than I am to take over. And this Red Sonja series could verge, could approach, Deadpool levels of, poking fun at the genre, although it's not quite that over the top.
No, but I dig it. We want to see that from some of these characters. Because again, the position you're putting this young lady in.
Well, when's the last time Red Sonja was fun? That.
Yeah.
Now, when's the last time she was fun? I mean, it's like,
it's been a while.
So serious here. Oh, yeah. Now I must do Red Sonja. Now I have to be so serious,
Yeah, they make her into a female Conan, but she's still female. She's gonna go through her funny shit. Dudes are dudes. I'm sure there's those awkward moments that she can share as a female.
Yeah.
There's vulnerability. I have a daughter. I see her silliness. So like, why can't?
But that's just that. Well, that's just it. You have to love women. You have to know women. You have to be, intimately involved with women. My sisters, my nieces, my little grandkid. This is an adopted family I have in Colorado, and the little girl is just the light of my life, and each one of these women have their own unique personalities and their
They
own,
do.
shticks that they do, and I just observe and I learn from so much from all of them. I'm always worried about any female character, particularly women characters, coming across as generic, and that afflicts people like Wonder Woman quite a bit, where people they're either in awe of the character. Superman too. You could write Superman in a very generic way, because it's too easy to be in awe of Superman, and that's happened to me. We did Superman Lost last year, and wow, I was really intimidated just going into that. But with Red Sonja, I would be very concerned about the character flattening out and just being generic sword girl.
I dig that,
and I think that the character Rey in the Star Wars, the J.J. Abrams Star Wars, there was a lot of criticism hurled toward her. I think that the character had a lot of interesting potential, but she just kind of like, she jumps in a spaceship and she knows how to fly, not just fly it, but fly it expertly, and evade the Darth Vader's people. I mean, that's not Darth Vader, but you know what I mean.
Wait, Priest, you telling me you and I can't jump in one of those jaws and just fly off on one?
Yeah, we just hop in and take off, and not just take off, but she's flying like these expert,
I got the guns, Priest. You driving? I got the guns. Don't you
exactly, and I thought the actress did a great job. I thought like the character.
She was a great actress, yeah.
But I find fault in the fact that they okay. So here's a better example. So what I liked was here's what I'm trying to go for with Sonja Reborn. Matt Reeves' Batman. Okay, so Zoe Kravitz shows up as Catwoman. Right now, she is a capable, smart, good fighter. Knows her stuff, knows how to break in the vaults, the whole 9 yards. Okay. I take nothing away from Catwoman as being a great character. But what happens the first time she meets Batman is Batman pins her to the table with one hand effortlessly, which is exactly what would happen if you're 5'4", 120-pound Catwoman going up against this 6'2" guy trained by the League of Shadows.
Like somebody looking like Reacher. Versus a little shorty. You know what's gonna happen, so you better stop.
But the point I'm trying to make is that I think that Matt Reeves gave us a credible, strong female character, but he didn't jerk us around and try to make us believe that she's going to give Batman a hard time.
Yeah,
every
she's
other
strong,
every other Catwoman that we've seen has like now they have this protracted fight between Batman and Catwoman. No, Matt Reeves boom. And that's what I'm getting at is like, I don't think Red Sonja can beat up Conan. I think that that's a lie. I'm not going to lie to readers. I don't want to read that, and I don't want to tell that.
Not in the fist fight. In the sword fight, maybe she might get a lucky strike. I would say that because again, she done it with a sword. But if we're going to talk physicality, hell, fucking.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing: is that the strength of Red Sonja, just like with the strength of Catwoman in the Matt Reeves Catwoman, the strength of this character is her understanding her limitations, just as you and I understand our limitations, and us working within those limitations to achieve, to survive, to achieve what she has to do. So she has to win the confidence of her men. And she has to keep the confidence of her men, because as soon as she's caught slipping, it's over for her. And that's the reality. And that's the difference between her and Conan, where, yes, Conan is in danger too. Yes, Conan is in peril. Yes, everything in the universe is trying to kill Conan, but it's doubly important for Red Sonja to, she has to actually be stronger. I mean, by stronger, be a stronger, I'm talking about strength of character. I'm not talking about physical strength. She has to be a stronger character than Conan, because because of her physical limitations and because of those types of things. So this is the kind of reality-based stuff that we're trying, and some people will like it, and maybe some people won't. I don't know, but I really hope that everybody at least gives us a shot and see if we can earn your trust there.
Priest, I'm giving you a shot like a mother. Don't you worry about that, baby. I want this. I want this in my life. I like what you're going and the narrative. It sounds interesting again, and I love it. Hey, this is what comics is a wider use of that imagination, baby, that multiverse, all that wonderful and good stuff.
And it ought to be like a little breath of fresh air. It ought to be like, well, here's something different. I haven't seen this before, as opposed to, and now the continuation of the same old crap.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call it crap. I didn't mean it like that.
No. But we're talking about it. We're tired of the same old shit. We want some new energy, something that actually does entertain our brain and takes us someplace else. That you don't want it to. We don't want to know what the next thing that's gonna happen is. Every story right now, what the next move is. 5 pages ahead. It's like, okay, what are we reading here? We don't want that no more.
But now we can tell the same story of Tothamon or whatever the evil magician is. We can tell that same story, Al. But now it's like we're seeing it through a different set of eyes. We're seeing this person who's never seen anything like this before. As opposed to Sonja. Sonja going, "Oh, you're back. Oh, now let me."
All I'll say is that's very evil to have someone jump in to Red Sonja's body in the middle of some. That's some evil storytelling. I'm like, I do not want to be hopping in the middle of no shit like that, but I love it. And my man says here, that's right, make it fresh. You got another reader on board. There you go. Listener. This is what I love. So, Chris, Priest, before we go, are you going to be making any appearances anywhere? It is con season. Any place where you'll get a signature, get those signed copies one for you in person?
I'll be at. I'm going to New Orleans.
Cool.
In July, and in August I'm going to Terrificon.
Nice in Connecticut. Yeah, I'll see you there. Then I love that show.
Okay, and then there's a couple other shows. I have to look at my calendar. I should always keep this handy. People ask me this all the time.
Yeah, man. People love you, Priest. Yeah. People love you. You're a legend. You're a big boss, man. You're one of our legends that are around that are still like. That's the craziness, man. You've been in the game so long, and you still bring us that sazon, that freshness, baby. You bring that spice to your storytelling. So before we go, tell them youngins out there, how is it that my man Priest keeps it so fresh still?
Oh man, I really couldn't tell you. I think that I try to sort of first of all, I try to have a good ear. I try to train my ear to to really listen to trends and listen to voices, particularly because I really like my characters to have to talk like real people, and I just try to well, what's a good show? What's a good TV show? What's a good movie? Where are things trending? That kind of thing. Just kind of keep your eye on stuff. Other than that, it's just, Al, I just feel blessed to be here. I feel very lucky to still be working, that people still want to hire me for some ungodly reason. So I'm just very blessed about it. Yeah.
And it's because of the Priest. They see you. Anytime you go to an interview, you just start wearing the priest collar too, the official.
I actually have that, by the way. I'm a ordained minister. It's true. I have a closet full of vestments in there.
Yeah, bro, I love it, man. Get it done, bro. Thank you for you keeping on and going on, teaching the new gen and keeping them inspired, bringing these wonderful stories as an OG fan. Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you for so many times of taking me out of dark places through your imaginative writing. So that's what it was. Then you took me to another world, got me out of my stress, got me out of that moment. So, as a fan, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Every creator that's ever done that for me.
God bless you, Al. Thank you. And, it's from one New Yorker to the other. Thank you very much.
I get that. That's what it is. Now, mi gente, check it out. Sonja Reborn numero uno, baby, is going to be in the shops August 6th. You understand me? So you better get that on your pull list right now. Go your favorite comic shop, go to your favorite digital store. However it is that you get your fandom on, get it on with this book right now. All right. And of course, you can also check out dynamite.com for not just Sonja Reborn, but a whole lot more, because they got a dope lineup of books, man. And, that I'm happy about. I know the fans are. A big shout out to my man Warehouse 9 Productions that has been chiming on. He says to you, Mr. Priest, rock on, baby. All right.
Thank you.
And keeping it fresh, we're definitely fans of what Priest has been doing in the game. I appreciate you. Again, as I said, and everybody that's been tuning in, check out everything Comic Crusaders at comiccrusaders.com. This is Omega. It is Priest. Hasta la próxima, mi gente. Huepa!
Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.com and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.